Hello and welcome to another episode of Dekonstruktiv Criticism. I'm your host Aron Flam, and today we'll be discussing Ayahuasca with Jordi Riba, one of the foremost experts in the field. Before we begin, I would like to urge you to become a patron on Patreon. As a reward, I will make a bootleg of my latest show available to patrons only within a month. So if you want to listen to my latest show, aptly named Aron Flam on Stage, become a patron within a month and pledge at least $10 and you'll get exclusive access to this fantastic reward. You who are already patrons will get this reward regardless. Now, without further ado, Jordi Riba. Discuss is so interesting that I have a very hard time believing that anyone would be bored. So I'll just fix this.
So is it correctly placed? Can you hear me okay from there?
I hope so. I'm a very poor sound technician. I'm a fairly okay comedian.
Okay. And when you speak with your headphones on, can you hear yourself?
I can hear you better than and myself better than normal people. I can have it like this if you want it to look like it's a normal conversation.
Okay, but you also get your own voice through the microphone and into the headphones.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. But you can keep them on. It's fine for me. I was just asking about the technical.
Yeah, no. These are completely new. They were bought because my listeners got really tired of adjusting the sound between each speaker in the podcast. So hopefully this will resolve the matter. Okay. But as I said earlier, they all seem to be audiophiles.
So am I inaugurating the new technology
yes,
you've brought into your program? Okay, I'm glad.
So welcome to Dekonstruktiv Criticism, Jordi Riba.
Okay, thank you.
You're a scientist.
Yes.
And a pharmacologist.
Yeah.
And a specialist in ayahuasca.
Yes, that's it.
And ayahuasca is what?
Ayahuasca is a psychoactive beverage, and I don't know if you want me to extend on
I do want
what it
to
is.
Extend, yes.
Well, it's been the object of my research for 20 years. It originates in the Amazon. It's prepared from several plants, and when humans ingest it, they get lots of interesting things going on in their minds. And what I try to find out is how this beverage and the active principles that it contains interact with the human brain. So in principle, we could say that ayahuasca is basically a tea that you obtain from a vine, from a climbing plant from the Amazon. It's been used by the indigenous people of that region of the planet for centuries, and they have revered it and given it spiritual significance. They use it in rituals, in rites of passage. In 20th century, it became the central sacrament of some Brazilian religions, and I don't think there's any other plant that's capable of doing that. So it left me wondering, and this is why I'm studying it.
So have you heard of Syrian rue?
Yes.
It is a plant that has sort of the same properties.
It has in different proportions, but it has the same active principles. It has the same, we call in technical terms, alkaloids. And it had been used by ancient civilizations. But what's interesting about ayahuasca is that it's rarely used alone. This climbing plant is usually combined with other plants that are also contain psychoactive substances. And the most common combination is with the leaves of a shrub that contains DMT or dimethyltryptamine. So dimethyltryptamine is a psychedelic similar to psilocybin, to mescaline, and from the pharmacological point of view, ayahuasca is very interesting, or at least this variety of ayahuasca, because it combines this DMT, this dimethyltryptamine, with the active principles of the vine that prevent DMT from being degraded when it's taken orally. So if you take a kilogram of DMT alone, you won't get any psychoactive effects. Whereas
because it breaks down in the stomach.
It breaks down in the stomach, in the gut. We have an enzyme that degrades this. So the alkaloids in the Ministryopsis capi vine, in the actual ayahuasca vine, they can prevent this degradation. They inhibit the enzyme.
I'm sorry, you have to maybe have your arms here because it sort of the sound breaks into the microphone.
Okay.
So, and you've been studying this for 20 years.
Yes.
So, can you just quickly, where are you doing your research now?
I'm based in Barcelona, in a hospital. It's called St. Paul's Hospital in Barcelona, and I run a research group there. It's called the Human Neuropsychopharmacology Research Group. And we basically are interested in psychoactive substances. So,
and this is a real hospital?
Yes, it's a real hospital. And this hospital has a research institute. I'm a full-time researcher for this research institute that's completely or closely linked to the hospital.
And so, how come you got interested in psychoactive substances?
They always caught my attention. So my initial studies were in pharmacy. I studied pharmacy. I was very interested in natural products. I read books about alkaloids, how they interacted with human physiology. I always had curiosity.
And what is an alkaloid, if you explain it quickly?
An alkaloid is a substance that it's synthesized by the plant. It's part of its so-called secondary metabolism. It's not necessary for its survival, so it doesn't play a part in obtaining energy, for instance, to maintain the plant alive. So nobody really knows exactly what's the role of these substances, these alkaloids in plants, but most of them have the peculiarity that they interact with the animal physiology. So some people believe that what they are tools to prevent being eaten by animals, for instance, because they would interfere with the physiology of the animal. So maybe the animal finds that unpleasant and won't eat that plant anymore. So as a defensive strategy. And other people believe, maybe more mystically inclined, that these alkaloids perhaps are a way in which the plant tries to establish symbiosis. Symbiosis with animals, symbiosis maybe with humans.
Yes, but that is a value statement.
Yeah.
It could be a parasitic relationship as well as a symbiotic relationship.
It could be anything. Nobody really knows what they are there, but they were discovered in the 19th century, and there's hundreds and thousands of them, and usually they are very simple molecules. If you take into account how our biology as primates, as humans, works, it's very complex. It's a soup of proteins, of enzymes, of phosphorylation, of proteins, dephosphorylation. You have genes being activated, deactivated, etc. And these alkaloids, compared to our biochemistry, they're really, really simple, but they can induce very powerful effects on how our body functions. And I was especially interested in those alkaloids that could modify how the brain functions. So we have alkaloids.
Why? Did you have like a personal reason to be interested in?
It was intellectual curiosity. So it had, or a philosophical question. I sometimes had these discussions with my father, he's an engineer, so he has studied science as well, and he had received some religious training in school, back in the 50s, 60s.
This was in Spain?
In Spain.
So during the dictatorship,
yes,
basically.
Yes. So, they had this religion class in school, so he had certain religious values. My grandparents were very religious. So I sometimes wondered whether we have a soul, for instance. And my view was that we are essentially biochemical entities.
Yes.
But we had these interesting discussions with my father, and one day I was in the university library, and I came across I actually grabbed a book on botany, because I was studying botany back then.
Ethnobotany, I suppose.
It was botany in general, but I was interested in those plants that actually you could take some substances that had pharmacological interest. So in the introduction of this thick volume there was the account written by Gordon Wasson
Yes.
of his experiences with the Mexican mushrooms and the sessions he had with Maria Sabina. And I was so stunned about what he reported that I thought, okay, you have now these alkaloids. They are not very different or even simpler than, let's say, morphine. We've been using morphine for 200 years to treat pain. But then you have this other substance that you ingested, and it interacts with your the most intimate aspects of your being. It changed the way you see the world. It changed the way you feel about yourself. You experience thoughts that come as revelations. And these people in Mexico had been using this for centuries as a sacrament. It was the center,
millennia, right?
or millennia. It was in the center of their worldview, and I was so surprised about that it always left a signature in my brain that might be interesting to study. So I had.
But when you found this text by Wasson,
Yeah.
you must have dug some more and found more text by Wasson. He has, after all, written Soma.
Yeah, but I was in my pre-doctoral undergraduate studies. So I had a lot to worry about. I have to pass many subjects. So my basic interest was chemistry of natural products, especially these alkaloids that interact with the brain. I had a small lab at home, so I would go around the city, would go to the mountains, etc. I would gather plants. I would do extracts. So I would isolate alkaloids just for the fun of it, right? Just for seeing if that could be done, etc.
How old were you?
Well, when I was doing this, I was already in college. I was like...
But when did you start
19
collecting plants and having a lab in your own apartment?
When we moved to this new place, where it was an apartment that had been designed by the person who was intending to move in as a photography laboratory. So he had already set it up. So I had always been interested in chemistry since I was 6. I had always played with these chemistry sets, etc. So we moved in this apartment. I was 13, I think. So I said, oh, this is going to be my realm, right? So this is my kingdom. So I set up my laboratory there. I had my microscope, everything, and I started working on this when I was 13, 14. Then I decided...
I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just...
Yeah. So I've always had an inclination for science, especially for chemistry. My initial idea was to study chemistry, but then I thought, okay, I'd like to see more of the biological and pharmacological aspects. I never saw myself as a medical doctor, didn't go into medicine. I was not interested in repairing humans, right? Like someone comes in and has a problem and you diagnose him and you give the remedy for that. I thought that was not very interesting. So I wanted to do research. Chemistry was the first thought. Then I did pharmacy. And after I finished pharmacy, then I started doing some postgraduate studies in organic synthesis, organic chemistry, indole alkaloids actually. We had the organic chemistry department in our faculty was really strong in this field. So I was there for 2 years. So that was already in 1994, something like that. And there was a conference that an anthropologist organized in a town that's 100 kilometers from Barcelona. And it was a conference on mind-altering substances. And some celebrities in the field, like Jay Scalaway, who had done this study on ayahuasca in Brazil, was attending. Also Shulgin, who had synthesized many active substances, was also attending, and many other famous people, but that I didn't know at the time. So I read about this conference in a newspaper just by chance after it had taken place. So I was not able to attend, but I read who the organizer was. I found his telephone, or the telephone of the organization. It was a research center for anthropology. I phoned there and I asked them if they would publish the abstracts of the conference. And he said, yeah, this will appear in a book, etc., etc. So we had this nice conversation on the phone. I kept working in this organic chemistry laboratory in the faculty, doing my graduate thesis. And one day I was doing an errand in the city in Barcelona, and I was near the place where I remember was this research institute for anthropology. So I went there, and then I asked the guy who took care of all the building, said, do you know where this institute is? And he said, yeah, it's I don't know anymore, but the 5th floor, 2nd door, whatever. So I went there, and this guy, I knocked at the door, this guy opened, and it was the anthropologist who had organized the meeting. So I said, we spoke on the phone, wanted just to drop by, say hello. He said, okay. He invited me in, and I think we spoke for like 3 hours, something like that. He told me about his research in Ecuador. He told me about ayahuasca. He asked me if I wanted to translate into Spanish a book by Jonathan Ott called Pharmacotheon. I did that. So that was an interesting way of learning about these substances. And he also mentioned that there were these Brazilian groups coming to Barcelona and organizing sessions with an obscure substance called ayahuasca. I didn't know what that was. And I said, could I meet some of these people? He introduced me to some of them, and I asked if I could attend these rituals. So I went there, and out of intellectual curiosity, it didn't disappoint me at all. What I saw, what I heard.
Did you partake, or were you just observing?
I partook. So it was also very interesting. And then I decided...
So what did you experience?
I wouldn't... I experienced very intense autobiographic memories, emotional effects, something that was really, really interesting, that was not recreational, and that fit very well with the descriptions that other people had given me.
And when you say it's not recreational, you mean this is not a drug one takes for fun? This is not an Ibiza rave party type of drug?
No, it was interesting because the first time I attended one of these rituals, I was so excited about going there, and they were people in Spain, but they were singing these hymns in Portuguese, and there was all this ritual going on, people dressed up in fancy dresses and singing and playing music and dancing and sitting down and now standing up, etc., etc. I paid so much attention to what was going on around me that I didn't experience anything at all. No psychoactive effects. Nothing. So I was like a bit disappointed the first time. And I said, okay, maybe I should come some other day and try again, maybe. So they were meeting every other week. And the second time I went, after 45 minutes, after having ingested the ayahuasca, I started feeling sleepy. I was yawning. I didn't pay attention anymore to what was going around me because I already knew what the ritual was. So I had this inclination to close my eyes, and then everything started. And it was really surprising. It was amazing, stunning. I don't think anyone is prepared for what's going to happen. And
if you think you are prepared, you will get a lesson in humility.
Yeah,
usually.
Yeah, that's what I got. So,
so the universe picked you up and told you know nothing.
Well, I felt exhausted when it was over. Really, that was for sure. And my surprise, let's say, or my inability to understand what had gone on matched and surpassed what I had written many years before in this account by Gordon Wasson. So I was never interested in nightlife, in recreational drugs. I was never a person who went out. I never smoked, drank some alcohol, maybe for fun, but I very rapidly got tired of standing in a bar with a glass in my hand trying to interact with someone and not being able because the music is so loud. So was never a party animal. So recreational drug use never interested me, and but this was totally different. So when you talk to people why they were taking ayahuasca, they said, okay, this brings us or brings me some insights into my deepest personal and emotional issues. And what I experienced in that second ayahuasca session was exactly that. I revisited the kind of relationship I had with every single person that was meaningful to me, that had an emotional connection to me. Family members, relatives, ex-girlfriends, you name it. So you have this substance, it's able to do this to you. And all the emotion I had not experienced in my previous 28 years, or maybe in the previous 10 when you reach adulthood. I don't know, you don't usually cry much anymore, or you don't feel anything emotionally intense anymore. And that simply grabbed me by the neck, and I had to experience that in such an intense way that I thought, wow, there's something we should look into. This deserves being researched. And this is when I decided that I wanted to do my PhD on ayahuasca. It was like an open field. There had been very few studies at the time. What we knew was the botanical ingredients, the plants that were being used to prepare it. We knew the alkaloid contents, but in 1994-95, nobody had published any paper on it. So the first paper from the Ayahuasca project, in which Jace Callaway participated, I think it was published maybe in 1996, something like that. So I thought, wow, this is an open field. Why follow the rest of the herd? Let's do something original, something new.
That's exactly what a person who'd just taken DMT would say.
Yeah. So I had this lingering interest for years. Now I had this opportunity, I had the context, I had this new unstudied or understudied preparation, psychotropic preparation, ayahuasca. I had these personal experiences. It had not disappointed me in the least. And I thought, well, maybe we can try to set up a research effort to study this. And this is how I got involved into all this field.
That's quite a story, and now you've spent 20 years.
Yes.
Of your entire... I mean, that's the most time I've heard anyone been obsessed with drugs without actually taking them.
Yeah, I have to say that I had a few experiences back then, but when this became the object of my everyday work, I simply withdrew from it. So it's 20 years I haven't experienced with ayahuasca or any other psychoactives for that matter since then, and I think it was the healthy approach. I don't think you lose any objectivity. It was not based on this concern that I did that. It was that it wouldn't simply not engulf my entire life.
I understand.
Because
whereas I think it was Biggie Smalls who put it, never get high off of your own supply.
etc. Or exactly, yeah, I would say.
So what is your research exactly? What is it you want to find out about these plants?
What I wanted to find about these plants, ayahuasca was the way I got into this field, but I'm interested in other psychoactives. I've done studies with Salvinorin, which is the active principle of Salvia divinorum, another plant used by the same human group, the Mazatecs in Mexico, that use the psilocybin mushrooms. And I've done studies with cannabinoids, with psychostimulants. I have collaborations with psychiatry department, neurology department. So I have a broad interest in everything that has to do with the brain. But my pet topic, let's say, has been ayahuasca. And this is perhaps why I've done so many studies with ayahuasca. I think there's something interesting in there, also from the pharmacological point of view, because you have a very complex combination of substances. It's not only one compound. It's not only one psychedelic. It's not only the DMT. And now, for instance, we have done some in vitro studies using the other active principles, and we see that it can also interact with the brain in very interesting ways. So it has kept me busy for many years.
Because the unique thing with ayahuasca, right, is DMT, since it breaks down in the stomach when taken orally, you have to combine it with an inhibitor for
Yes.
MAO, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you think the the native people of South America even figured this one out? There's an almost endless supply of different plants.
Yeah, it's a complete mystery, but so some people say, wow, they must be really like ingenious to have come up with this combination. But the truth is that they have also combined the Banisteriopsis caapi vine with many other plants. So this is only one of the hundreds of possible versions of ayahuasca, and in some human groups in the Amazon, the vine, the tea obtained from the vine, can be used without any additives, just for purging. So there are some rituals that only involve the tea obtained from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine with this monoamine oxidase inhibitors.
So why would they use a plant for basically purging? For my listeners who doesn't understand, is throwing up.
Yeah, throwing up, also accelerating
metabolism.
Yeah, well, not metabolism, but the transit in your gastrointestinal tract, in the gut. And one explanation is to get rid, for instance, of parasites. So there's many of them that you can get.
So that might have been the first discovery that this can help us.
Yes, because in the tropical regions of the earth, you have many parasites that cause very unpleasant illnesses, and this could be a way of getting rid of these parasites. So that could have been an initial application. Then maybe they started combining it with other substances. Most of these groups had experiences already with other mind-altering plants, like tobacco. Tobacco is the most widespread mind-altering plant in the Amazon and in South America. So they already knew what a modified state of consciousness is and how to induce it. So maybe they when they came up with this combination of the Banisteriopsis caapi and the shrub I was mentioning earlier that contains the DMT, they essentially saw that it was perhaps a more effective way of getting into this spiritual realm. So in their worldview, there's a spiritual realm. This spiritual realm interacts with human affairs. So you can go there and see what the causes of illnesses are. You can find a cure for the diseases that afflict individuals, and for many other uses. It's interesting for them to access this parallel world. So maybe they finally found this combination, and many groups stuck to it. So that it must have been by trial and error. We think that humans reached the Americas from Asia. I think it's like 10,000 years ago. So maybe they had plenty of time to experiment.
Obviously, they did.
With their surroundings. Many of these groups have a very deep knowledge of plants and how they can put them to use. For instance, dart poisons that they can use to hunt. This is also obtained from plants. There are other poisons that they are used that they can be used for fishing. They can like in shallow water, they can create like a sort of pond, isolate the fish from the rest of the stream. They drop the juice of certain plants, and this juice stuns the fish. It doesn't kill them, but they get stunned, and they can fish them more easily. So they have been using plants for many purposes for centuries, and this is just one of the plants that they are using, or one combination they are using. It fits well with their worldview.
And you took the ayahuasca, and then you freeze dried it to get pills to be able to do the study in a scientific way.
Yes, when I thought that perhaps it would be interesting to study this, it took us many years before we actually conducted the first study in humans, and of course, that was my first steps in research. So I didn't know anything about ayahuasca, but also I didn't know anything about research, and I didn't know anything about psychopharmacology. And then you see the methodology that's used in this kind of studies. So my mentor had a lot of experience in studies in healthy volunteers, studies assessing the effects of psychopharmacological agents. And he said, okay, if we want to do this, we have to standardize this. This is problematic. You have here a tea. So do you want to study the active principles?
Because every shaman in the rainforest makes this tea differently, and it's different every time because the plants are harvested at different times. And there's so many variables.
Yeah, the initial question was, should we study the pure compounds or ayahuasca? And as what people were taking was ayahuasca, I wanted to see what the effects of ayahuasca on the human physiology, the human brain was, and not only the active principles. So we decided to go for ayahuasca. But ayahuasca is a tea. It's a very acidic tea. It has a very low pH. This is why it's so irritating when you take it orally. Any active principles that you have in a tea will get more rapidly degraded in the presence of water than if it's not in the presence of water. So from one batch of ayahuasca to another, there's going to be changes in the concentration. And then if you store it for a while, more likely than not, you're going to have less and less amounts of active principles there. So it's going to change from one day to another. So how can you dose this accurately? And this is how we came up, and this took us a long time, with the idea that we would freeze dry it. So we extract all the water in the solution, in the tea, at very, very low temperature. And what we are left with is with everything that's present in the tea except for the water. So then we can measure the active principles in this powder. We can encapsulate this powder and administer it in very exact doses. And also, in this way, when you give it encapsulated, you prevent this initial irritation of the stomach, of the gut. So it becomes more tolerable for the participants. It's less unpleasant than taking the
You showed a picture
ayahuasca.
as a lecture last night of one of the first participants in the study. He was wearing a marijuana t-shirt.
Yes.
And he had done ayahuasca before.
Yes.
And you said he was worried that the spirit of the ayahuasca plant was gone because you'd freeze-dried it. And then...
Well, of course, he said that joking.
Yes,
but there was this
but at least now we can scientifically rule out that the ayahuasca spirit is not made of hydrogen.
Exactly. Hydrogen plus oxygen. So you can remove safely the water, and you will still get psychoactive effects. That's for sure. I can swear that this is the case.
So what did your first initial study when you started administering these gelatin capsules? I suppose they are vegan gelatin, or?
I won't get into that. I don't want to upset anyone.
Okay. So, and what was this study about? What did you do in this study?
So imagine you are in a hospital setting, and suddenly you write a protocol and you submit it to the ethics committee, and you say you want to give this strange brew from the Amazon to healthy volunteers, and this is going to cause psychoactive effects similar to those of psilocybin and other analogous substances. So
a schizomimetic, basically.
Well, there's so many terms. You have entheogens, you have hallucinogens, you have psychedelics, schizomimetics, psychotomimetics, fantasticants, mysticomimetics. So everyone uses a different term, and I think this is the most clear way to see that we have no clue of what they produce, right? Because if you have a different term for the same thing and you have hundreds of them, it means that you don't know exactly what they are causing. So I think this is even more in favor of studying these substances. But
what would you call them?
I call them psychedelics.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a term I like most. I know it's associated with maybe like recreational drug use in the 1960s. Sometimes hear about psychedelic lights or psychedelic colors. But if you look at what the term really means, which is mind revealing, and I think it's quite appropriate. I think it gives you access to content that's in your mind, and you access it in a way that you cannot elude it.
And it's more scientific than entheogen.
Well, entheogen causing the God within. Well, if you don't believe in gods, then perhaps it's not for you. It has these religious overtones.
Yeah.
So in some groups use it for religious purposes, but other people might not have this view. So it was, I think it was the term I'm more comfortable with. I must say that in the scientific literature, the most frequent term is hallucinogen, but I think it has negative connotations. So
also,
maybe
not entirely correct.
Yeah, because you don't really have real hallucinations, alterations with eyes opened. It's more similar. The visions you might have with the substances it's more similar to what you get in dreams. So there's also this term oneirogens, which means they substances that generate dreams. Oneirogens, but it's like
it's a beautiful word.
Yeah, but as I think not many people would understand what you are referring to because it's not so.
So we'll stick to mind revealing then.
So mind revealing, but dream creating is also nice, I think. So in a way, you are making people dream while they are awake. When you give them these substances, or when one takes these substances, and when you see that, or when you think that, when you get into science, you are on a quest for knowledge, you want to satisfy your curiosity. In a way, you want to make your own dream come true, which is being perhaps a little more wise after some years of doing research. So this is also appealing to me, substances that make you dream, because I already daydream without any substances. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten into research in the first place, right? So, yeah, this is what we call them, and mind revealing, I think, is quite, it reflects quite well what most people report experiencing, at least after taking ayahuasca.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah.
You were talking about the first study.
Yeah, in the first study, yeah, I said that they were a little bit shocked, the ethics committee, but we had all this experience of previous studies with lots of other medicines, and we knew how to conduct this safely. So the first study was a dose finding study, that we call it. So we only enrolled people who had a lot of experience with the use of psychedelics. If I remember correctly, most of them had experience with ayahuasca, if not all of them. It was a study in 6 or 8 volunteers. Don't remember the figure exactly now. And we administered 3 different doses in increasing order. So we didn't tell this to the participants. We told them, okay, this is going to be totally random, and there's going to be a low dose, a medium dose, a high dose, and a placebo. But this was to control expectancy. But the actual design was that we would give first the low dose, then the medium dose, then the high dose. So we did this gradually, and we measured like the effects on heart rate, on blood pressure. We also did blood analysis before and at the end of the study, and we saw that although we got some increases in blood pressure, these were moderate. We didn't see.
Was it during the experience?
Yes. We
because afterwards, no.
Well, we took measurements all along the experience. So right before and at different time points during the effects of ayahuasca until 8 hours approximately after intake, when all the effects had disappeared. So they came to the lab on 4 different occasions, and these were healthy volunteers. We had made sure when we enrolled them that they complied with the definition of healthy volunteer, like no problems with the heart, no problems with blood pressure, with cholesterol, no previous medical condition, etc. And when the study was finished, they left, and we did what we call the end of study blood analysis, and everything was fine again. So that went on very well. We obtained psychoactivity. We obtained the initial data that we published in our first paper in 2001. we showed the ethics committee that we had been able to do this in a safe manner, that no major problems had emerged out of that. That ayahuasca in this freeze-dried form could be safely administered in the lab, and that was our starting point. Afterwards, we've conducted many other studies with the substance, and we've never had any problems. So it can be done safely in laboratory conditions.
And how long did it take you to get this study from when you first conceived it until it was done?
I started my PhD in '96, so I went to this pharmacology department in our hospital in '96. The first study, the pilot study, in healthy volunteers, we started at the beginning of 1999. So it was 2 years. And
so that's fine. You weren't hindered in any way doing your research.
Well, I have to tell you that my supervisor was really interested in studying this, and he gave me a lot of liberty. So, yeah, you want to study this, so you'll see how you manage to do this. So, this is a nice way to say that I didn't receive much actual support from the rest of the people in my department, and most of the faces were quite skeptical at the time. So the other people working there were really reluctant, or they had their doubts about whether this was feasible at all, and also whether this should be done at all.
Ethical.
But the head of the department was for it. He supported me, and he had this good reputation of many years doing studies in humans. We got approval, we did it, we published it, we showed it could be done safely. And I've seen a change in attitudes in this 20 years. It has taken a while. So,
because you showed one of the slides you showed last night was from 2001, I think, and it had your name on it, and then it had the name McKenna on it. I'm guessing Dennis. No?
Dennis McKenna, but this is a article that we've published in 2016.
Okay, so this is a new one.
It's a review article.
All right.
Yes, that we wrote together.
So how did you meet Dennis McKenna?
Dennis McKenna, when did I meet him for the first time? I actually can't remember exactly. I think in 1996 there was a conference in San Francisco, and all the luminaries that had participated in this Ayahuasca project in Brazil, including Dennis McKenna, were there. And I think I met him for the first time there. And over the years, we have this email interaction. We've met at conferences, and gradually, we're not so many. There's not so many of us in this field. So there's every time there's a conference going on, you meet
all of them.
Not all of them, but you have the chance to meet these people regularly. So there were not so many of these conferences 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but this last year, I had like an Excel file with all my appointments. And in 2016, I've presented my ayahuasca results at, I think, 13 different conferences. So here in Stockholm, I have a directory called P for presentation P13 Stockholm. So the interest for this topic has exploded in recent years. So we are living through in cosmological terms, the inflation process, right? Like it's booming right now. So I'm getting more and more interest.
I think you're absolutely right.
Also from clinicians. So what took me to the field was actually to try to figure out what the mechanism of these substances is. That was my basic interest.
And have you found that out now?
I think we know some aspects as to how they interact with the brain, but they are simple molecules that produce very complex effects. So we only have a part of the whole picture. So I wouldn't say that I can entirely explain how they act, and I don't think anyone can explain how they act. But we have a certain clue as to how these things work. And I think this is a
So
theme.
what is it that happens?
What is it that happens? Well,
As simply as possible.
as simply as possible, you have a modification of the usual pattern in which the brain works, and this allows material stored in memory to emerge. For some reason, these materials are emotional memories. This can manifest itself in the form of visions. So you have activity in the visual cortex, you have activity in areas processing memory, you have activity in areas processing emotion. And there's also a decrease in the control that's being exerted by those areas in the brain that are the conductors, to use a metaphor, in this orchestra. So you're usually interpreting reality based on your previous experiences. So you have like a sort of conditioning based on what your brain has experienced in the course of your lifetime, and suddenly you switch off this mechanism of interpreting everything in an automatic fashion according to your preconceived ideas.
Basically, you're shutting down parts of the operating system.
You're shutting down the governing parts of this operating system, and the lower parts in the hierarchy, all the different aspects that form your psyche and work in synchrony, perhaps start acting on their own. So you remain as an observer. You can observe your own psyche, you can observe these elements, and you start having access, perhaps, to information that was being suppressed, and you start interpreting inputs from internal and external sources in a different way.
So this is very similar, because I interviewed David Nutt a few weeks ago. This is similar to what he found when he was doing MRIs on the human brain on psilocybin and LSD, that the what you call it, DMN network?
Yeah.
The DM network, basically. Otherwise it would be a tautology. It sort of closes down, and then everything has to basically it's a democratization of the brain. You strip the dictator of his powers.
Yes.
He's still there, but he can't do anything, and then the people have to figure it out together how it's...
Yeah, yesterday I was talking to Alex Lebedev, who works at Karolinska, and we have a collaboration. He's analyzing some data we have gathered
Is he
in an MRI scanner.
He's the guy who's doing the study on psilocybin microdosing or LSD microdosing?
I think he wants to conduct a study on LSD microdosing.
Oh, he should use me.
So he says, I'm analyzing what goes on after ayahuasca intake, and I see, but this is when the effects had already disappeared. But in any case, he said, I find more variability in the signals that we are recording in the scanner, more variability in the different networks that comprise the activity of the brain as a whole. So in a way, you are allowing the brain to act in a less constricted way when you are under the effects of a psychedelic. So we are approaching how these substances work using different techniques, and each technique gives us like a small bit of information of how this might be working. And this is like a piece in a puzzle. So we don't have the whole picture yet, but we are adding little by little these pieces in the missing spaces in the puzzle. So gradually we will be able to understand better, not perhaps completely explain what goes on in the brain under the effects, or how is it possible that these changes in brain biochemistry have such a profound impact on what we consider our private sense of self. So as I had this interest in also in how religious people interpret existence and the self and the presence of a soul, I could use the metaphor that these substances interact with your soul, right? But but for me, it's the demonstration that our soul is basically biochemistry. Otherwise, you would ingest any substance and you wouldn't see any changes there.
So basically, what you're saying is, if you want to meet God in a symbolic sense, in a symbolic sense,
I would rather stick to the term soul if I have to move into the religious,
the metaphysical
realm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if what happens is, when you take away the personality, basically, you experience a oneness with everything. Isn't that true? I mean, that's one of the things that people report they experience on hallucinogens. I experienced a oneness with everything around me. And when you take away the personality, that's what sets you apart from everything. So
maybe this was not such a frequent occurrence in the studies I've conducted with ayahuasca. It was more personal, more emotional, and more related to your life experiences. In the words of people who are regularly attending these ayahuasca rituals, they say that they get confronted with their own problems, and that you cannot run away from them. That that ayahuasca brings these issues to their mind's eye, so they have to face them. They cannot run away from these issues. Very few people have expressed the idea that they become one with the universe. Maybe this is more common with other psychedelics. Maybe this could be also the object of research. Maybe not all psychedelics are created equal. Who knows? But
no, they're definitely not created equal. But from personal experience, I can tell you, they have different effects.
So yeah, studying a substance that interacts with our soul, and soul in quotes, I think it's interesting because it answers some philosophical questions as to what are we? We don't know exactly what we are. You open your eyes one day to this universe and you see two adults who say that they are your parents, and then they have expectations, and you have to...
They sure do.
And you have to struggle and meet their expectations and study and behave in a way or in another way, and maybe you reach adulthood and you wonder who you are actually.
Yeah.
And many people are left with this existential question and this existential void. So many people approach the use of these substances not to get away from reality, but perhaps to answer these existential questions. And for some people, this brings some relief.
Yeah, one of your studies actually showed a decrease in depression after taking just one dose of ayahuasca.
Yeah, this is a collaboration study that we've conducted with a group in Brazil, and we treated people who were resistant to the usual pharmacological approaches, able to interventions such as electroconvulsive therapy. So nothing really worked for them. They were desperate. They were experiencing this existential void. Life was meaningless for them. So perhaps they've had considered putting an end to their lives many, many times. So why not try with ayahuasca having these potent effects on the psyche, and perhaps providing some meaning to people's lives if it could exert antidepressant effects, and it actually did. So we had this initial study with only 6 patients. We gave a single ayahuasca dose. We used standard measures of depressive symptoms, and just a few hours after ayahuasca intake, these ratings on the scales were lower than at the beginning. So you might think, okay, this is the high. So maybe you give also, I don't know, amphetamine to someone, and they also feel happier, and then you'll get these decreases in these rating scales. But the interesting part was that was maintained the day after, and the week after, and 3 weeks later. They were still more satisfied, happier with their life, with their existence, less depressed than they were at the beginning. And we have replicated this study with a larger sample. The results were the same. And now I'm also collaborating with another ongoing study. We haven't finished it yet. And in this study, we are using a more sophisticated design. So we are using a placebo. We have a control group, so we'll be able to see whether it's just suggestion or whether it's the effects of the.
It's
of
scientifically correct, but poor these depressed fuckers. They're going in with hope that they'll be happier, and you give them a placebo.
But maybe if this works out and we show that it's effective, we can offer this possibility to them.
Let's hope they stay alive for that long.
Well, hopefully, it's not a life-threatening illness.
Ah, well,
but
I'm fine with it. You said you didn't want to fix people. You were in it for the curiosity, so.
In the beginning, but I must say my view has changed.
You now like helping people.
Yes. After 20 years being in the field, a field that, as I said, caused people to look at you with suspicion, with this idea that perhaps this shouldn't be studied, or with skepticism, to put it mildly. You have to be resilient to keep on working on this with all this skepticism around you. So in the beginning, it's curiosity. Maybe it's still the driving force, but then you start hearing stories of people who informally had very problematic issues, like addictive drug taking. People who were, I know a specific case of a woman who was injecting heroin 15 times a day. She was living in one of the worst areas around Barcelona. I cannot even call it a neighborhood. It was really a rundown area, and she rapidly got infected with HIV, with hepatitis C. She had tried many treatments to get rid of this heroin habit. She was also always relapsing, and she had reached a point where the next step for her was just to die of an overdose or all the acquired infections she was suffering from. So she was being treated by a psychiatrist who knew about ayahuasca. He's a colleague who I've been interacting with for 20 years now, and he thought that it might be a good idea maybe that she tried this. And she and other people were sent to Brazil. A clinic was organized there. The use of ayahuasca is legal in Brazil. So they went there. They had a series of sessions. They stayed for a couple of months. And this person was able to completely give up a heroin habit. And like her, I know 20 cases that followed this path. And when you meet these people and they tell you that this has helped them, and that they are so satisfied that someone is looking into this and doing research in this field, then you think, okay, maybe all this effort, all this resilience, all these years of having skeptical faces staring at you have been worthwhile, because these people can explain what has happened to them and how it has helped them. But mainstream society and science won't pay much attention to that.
Because this is one of the most important findings of your research, is that ayahuasca reprograms the brain. So if you're addicted to heroin or cocaine, your brain is wired towards that reward.
Yes. So besides ayahuasca research or research on psychoactives, I've also done research on addiction to cocaine, and also studies on the effects of cannabis, long-term effects of cannabis. And we did a neuroimaging.
I'm a big fan of both.
Okay, excellent. You mean the studies?
Ooh, sure.
Okay. Okay, I'm glad you read them. So, we did this neuroimaging study with 30 people who were diagnosed of cocaine dependence. They were in treatment centers. They were clean. They had gone through detox. They were not taking any cocaine at the time of the study. We obtained these images of the brain. We assessed how the brain functions and how the structure of the brain is in comparison to the structure and function of the brain of people who have never used cocaine. And we saw that not only the way the brain works, like the software, the function is different, but the structure itself is different. And these changes in structure correlate with the amount of cocaine these people have taken in their life. So, although we cannot infer causality, we can very likely say that this is a consequence of the cocaine use. And what we see is that some structures in the brain have increased in volume. There's more cells in those areas, and they are more interconnected, and these areas have to do with the processing of pleasure. So you are hardwired to look for rewards for something that has an hedonic value, and connectivity outside this reward circuit is decreased. So these people get focused basically on a single behavior, which is procuring the drug, procuring cocaine, and they are constantly relapsing. This is what clinicians tell us. They say, okay, they come here, they detox, they stay with us for 3 months. We try to accompany them when they go back into society, try to support them, but nevertheless, the vast majority we see again within a few months. They are back in. They have relapsed. They've taken again, and they've started this vicious circle. So when I found these results in this study, I thought, okay, no wonder, because now their brain is wired in a way that that it's programmed to repeat this action on and on and on, and it's going to be very hard to break this, because it's not only function, it's also structure. And then you see people who, after some ayahuasca sessions, have been able to completely abandon this use of cocaine or heroin. So you might think that ayahuasca has perhaps the possibility of rewiring the brain. And now we have done some in vitro studies. That means in a flask, we
Petri dish.
Yeah, petri dish. We obtain some cells from the brains of animals. You culture them. These are stem cells. We have cultured these cells with the active principles present in the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, in the ayahuasca vine, and we have seen that they promote the development of stem cells into neurons. In technical terms, this is called neurogenesis, or birth of new neurons. So in the adult brain of humans, new neurons are being generated in certain areas constantly through your lifetime. It's very few of them, but it's a topic of increasing research interest to try to stimulate these areas where new neurons are being produced. So when you see in the lab, in these petri dishes, in this test tube, that the active principles of ayahuasca can stimulate the birth of new neurons, can increase the rate in which new neurons are being generated, and they are being stimulated to migrate and to incorporate into existing circuits, neural circuits. Maybe this can explain why people that are hardwired to take addictive drugs are able to quit after a number of experiences with ayahuasca. So I think this is a tremendous finding. I think we were amazed when we saw this, and we are pursuing this line of research. And as I say, 20 years of underfunded effort, skepticism around me, you don't expect much reward anymore out of satisfying your curiosity. And then when someone comes to you and says, I'm really grateful that you're doing this work because it's helped me, and if you can explain this to the scientific community at large, I think this will benefit others. It will help benefit others. Then you feel a lot of satisfaction. So I think now, more than publishing in a high impact journal or thinking that someday I'll be able to have a better post in my institution, whatever, I think, okay, now I know like 20 people who were in the path leading directly to death, really leading normal lives, having families, being satisfied with life, having children. I don't mean they have become bourgeois. It's simply that they have become happy with their lives, and they have found meaning after all. So this existential void has been filled. So I think this is a problem with many individuals. Yesterday someone in the audience said perhaps people who have a tendency to reflect on life, he said it in terms of high IQ, experience this existential void, and maybe they are more prone to depression. So I think many people in society might identify with this feeling. So in some severe cases in which this has led perhaps to autodestructive patterns of behavior, ayahuasca has proved effective. So now I'm more motivated than I was perhaps like 10 years ago, when maybe this curiosity had decreased a little bit and I couldn't see any practical applications for ayahuasca. Now you see that people are getting some benefit out of it, and that keeps you running, because there's no much additional reward that you get by working on this non-mainstream field of research.
I can't speak for everybody, but I'm glad you continue.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for coming to Dekonstruktiv Criticism. I could talk to you for another hour, but unfortunately your chaperones want to take you away.
Well, I'm very grateful for the invitation. It's been great to be here, and thanks for your interest in our research.
I hope I get to interview you again.
Okay, me too.
Thank you.